All right, so we got something fun today. I'm going to be making a video testing different blade shapes. I bought a 15-pound ham. It's a bone-in ham. It's already cooked. It was on sale at the store, so I decided to buy that. It's wrapped up here on my dummy, and it's got saran wrap around it. We're going to be testing different blade shapes. These are all going to be knives I made besides one because I haven't made any serrated knives yet. Maybe something I'm trying pretty soon. So I just want to see the difference in the cuts that the different blade shapes make. So we'll be doing recurve blades, some standard blades with a big belly, and we've got some Wharncliffe blades, different blade shapes. Just want to see what it does. It's not a serious test, that's scientific. Just want to see what it does to our target here, which is meat wrapped in plastic. Kind of compare and contrast. So this does have a bone in it. I'm trying not to hit the bone, but it's right here in the top. I'm trying to hit it in the thicker parts of the meat so we can see what it's doing to the actual meat. But if I hit it, it's fine. It's no big deal. This is the Hawkbill blade. Well, obviously, going to have to replace the shrink wrap a couple of times. That was not obviously a full power blast. That was just a quick strike, but it opened. I can stick my finger all the way in there. It opened it up pretty well. So that's the power of recurve blades, is that as you're striking, because this edge is leading, it's going to pull the knife into the cut. So it's going to go very deep. For a direct comparison, I'm use this blade right here. This is another one of my blades. It's called the Rhino. It's got a great grip on it. It's a traditional clip point with that big belly on it. This one also has a sharpened swedge. This part here's sharpened for the call fighting. But we're just going to use this edge right here. We're going to show the difference in the cut between that recurve blade, which is that drawing cut, and this belly. See what it does. We already see example of the difference. This cut much longer, but because of that belly, it slides and accelerates through the cut. In fact, I almost cut into my bag here, but this thing is all busted up and broken. It's been abused, but it did make a nice cut. It cut with the part that I hit, but we're gonna do one more strike, and I'm gonna try to get it more in line with this, with the ham, so we can really see what it can do. I mean, it's cutting pretty deep, but it does not have that same depth of penetration that a recurve blade, because it doesn't have that pull. A recurve blade, as you hit, it's going to dig that point in, it's going to pull into it. The benefit of having a belly like this is obviously for utility purposes. You can cut against a flat surface, like if you're cutting rope against a flat surface, or for kitchen knives, you can cut on a cutting board. Also, it's less likely to get snagged. So if you had something a little tougher than just this shrink wrap, if you had like clothing on, it's less likely when you're using this knife that it's going to get snagged and pulled in their clothes, possibly losing the knife. You're going to be able to follow up with quick, successive strikes. And if we had a much longer target than just this short ham here, you could see that as you strike and you reach resistance, this belly is going to start to turn this knife, and it's actually going to accelerate through that cut. And what you end up with is very long cuts. Now, the longer the blade is, the more exaggerated the length of those cuts are going to be. But even with a short knife like this, you can get a much longer cut because you have a longer cutting surface. And as it reaches this curve, it accelerates. And so what it's going to do, we're going to have a longer cut that's not quite as deep as, say, like a recurve blade. Next, we're going to try the Wharncliffe blade, which is going to be like a straight edge blade. I'll show you what that does. So this is a Wharncliffe blade. So it has a completely straight blade. It's very similar to like a traditional sax knife, S-E-A-X. So it has a flat, straight edge. Now this is my design. It's called the Gator. It has this retention ring that goes around the ring finger, or it can also go around on the first finger or the pinky finger, whichever configuration you want. If you want to apply more pressure towards the tip, then obviously you can choke up. This has two different hold positions, both really comfortable. You either hold back for more range, or you can choke up. You have more leverage on the tip, which brings me to my point that with a Wharncliffe blade design with this straight edge, you're gonna be able to apply even pressure from the heel to the tip. It's great as a utility cutter, box cutter. This works perfectly. That pinky can just go right into that ring right there. You have a lot of control over the blade. You can make very precise cuts with that tip. Put pressure right out of the tip. Use it just like you would a box cutter for cutting drywall, cutting cardboard, whatever else you need to. So if you're pushing through like cardboard, doing like push cuts, you're not gonna have to worry about this slipping out. However, when you're cutting through material like this pig flesh, what you're gonna have is more of a pop. So think about this blade shape as more of a chop, or like, there's a reason the axes have straight edges for the most part. They have a little bit of curve, but depending on the application, most of them have straight edges. What you're gonna get is more impact and more pop. You should still get separation in the material, but you're not gonna get those long cuts that you would get with a blade with a belly, a curve, or with the recurve. You're not gonna get that draw in and deep slash. What you're gonna have is more of a pop. So it's just the way that you're using the blade. This blade has a chisel ground swedge on top, so you have a good amount of penetration. You can also use it in Pakal grip. So the length of the cut is the exact length of the blade, which makes sense. I don't know if, I'll see if we can slow this down a little bit and you can see, but as the blade hit, rather than sliding or drawing, it just chops straight in. Now, this has a pretty wide, it's pretty wide behind the edge, so it's a lower bevel, and it provides more separation in material. And that's why it looks almost like chopping into it with a hatchet. It just goes straight in. Now, it went pretty deep. It went all the way down to here. But this has already been cut right here. Let's try an area that has not been cut. We'll try it right across the top here. Once again, did very good. The cut length is the exact length of the blade. So that's and I'm gonna have to obviously take this back and wash this thing off. I have to wash everything off. But that's the important takeaway, is that you're gonna get more of a chopping cut. The length of the cut is gonna be approximately the same length as the blade, because as you hit, you're applying even pressure, so you're not gonna have a slide, or you're not gonna have a draw. You're gonna have more of a pop. So it's gonna be quick strikes. Think about it more as strikes more than slashes. So if you have a blade with a big belly on it, you can get those smooth and repetitive slashes. With a blade like this, you're gonna be delivering quick pops. And then of course, if you buy one of my knives, the Gator, you're gonna have this sharpened tip as well, so you're gonna have excellent penetration. So you can use these quick jab-like pops, and then you have that very acute and sharpened point that you can use for penetration as well. If you get real close range, you can use it as a Pakal style knife for drawing. And this is gonna have a completely different geometry because it's angled. So then you would be able to draw and do repeated strikes. Moving on. All right, I got this ham flipped around to the other side, so we have some fresh cutting surface area. And the next few blades are actually not going to be different. That's necessarily blade shapes. What we are demonstrating is different edges. A blade that is chisel ground. And if you don't know what chisel ground means, that means in a traditional knife, you have two edge bevels that start somewhere on the blade and they work their way down to the acute edge, which is the cutting edge. These would be symmetrical on both sides of the knife. So the left and right side, this side and this side, would both have a edge bevel. What's typical would be somewhere around 20 degrees per side, so a total of 40 degrees. With a chisel ground knife, it is like a wood chisel. So the bevel is all on one side and the other side is completely flat. Now, a flat side is a 0 degree bevel. So what you end up with is a knife that has a much more acute cumulative edge angle. A lot of Japanese knives, sushi knives, are made this way. So the advantage is that you can get a very acute angle, so it can be very sharp. The disadvantage is that there's going to be bias when you're cutting. if you're cutting through material, it's going to want to pull towards the bevel side. So this side is beveled. So as you're cutting through material, it's going to want to like swerve in that direction, because it's like having one side of your car with tires on it, one side of your car without tires on it. It's going to pull to the side with tires on it. And that's what that bevel is. Once again, the benefit though, another benefit, other than it being acutely sharp, is that that tends to remove material in the direction of the bias. So if you're striking this way, material, the blade will cut through the material at an angle like this and remove that material, which can be pretty devastating. So we're gonna try this chisel ground blade next. We have a serrated blade. This is a cold steel Coben. I haven't made any serrated blades yet. I want to, probably will. We're gonna see what the serrated blade does. We know what serrated blades do because the steak knives are serrated blades, but I want to see what it does when you swing it. And then the last knife is one of my most recent knives, which is called the Thorn. And this is more of a saber style knife. The geometry is pretty robust. This is made for using that point. Long, thinner blade. It is bayonet ground, which means it is ground on both sides at the tip, but the base right here is not sharpened. And that's going to give you a lot of penetration. Also has a little hand guard on it. But as you can see, this is ground similar to what you would expect to see out of a sword. So it's going to have more thickness behind the edge to provide more edge stability and more strength. So you're less likely to lose that edge, but it's not going to slice as well because there's going to be more resistance. But once again, this knife, while you can, of course, slash with it, is really meant for penetrating. First one we're going to try is the chisel ground blade. This is called a Dash, also available on the website. It's Kiridashi, traditional Kiridashi style, which is common in Japan. It's like a utility knife. All right. And as you can see, that passed through with no problem whatsoever. Very sharp with that chisel grind. Cut all the way back to here. Full length of blade, and then it kind of just slid straight through in the path that I slashed. I think, let's see if we can, yeah, absolutely you can. So maybe hard to see from there. We'll get a little closer. But as it started to cut from here, you can see how it started to curve towards this direction. So it does almost like a smiley face style cut, and that's once again because the bevel was on this side, so it biased towards that side. All right, next we're gonna try cold steel Coben. This is a pretty notorious blade. Supposedly it was carried by CIA operatives that were embedded with the Navy SEALs that killed bin Laden. This is what they were carrying. This is a very nice and light knife. It's made by Cold Steel. It has this rubberized handle on it, stainless steel, hollow ground. They wore it right here. There's a sheath that's pretty high retention, but they wore it right here. And this is definitely like a self-defense knife. It's got that American Tonto tip that Cold Steel is known for. I opted for the serrated version. They make plain edge versions as well, and it's not that expensive. This is like $60, I think, normally. You can buy them on Amazon or coldsteel.com. Not affiliated. I'm gonna make something better than this. So let's test it out. So, in theory, serrations are basically a series of smaller pointed blades. So as you can see there, I mean, everybody's used a steak knife. You know what it does. It doesn't really saw because saws remove material as they're cutting. What it does is provide greater leverage on each one of those points to deepen the cut. So theoretically, if you're slashing through something, it should accelerate the cut. You also have much more sharpened edge because of all those tiny little points. So it should accelerate the cut and allow you to cut through thick material more quickly. That being said, obviously, things can get caught in all those little teeth and cause it to snag, especially fabric, whatever else. But serrated blades also cut really well through ropes, so we're going to see what this does against a ham. I'm going to do more of a lateral. I'll do more of a lateral strike right here, just so we can get some thickness. I suspect this is going to sail right through. And it sure did. So it cut very deep, as you can see. You can see there from it struck right there. And of course, I'm passing through at an angle because we're moving forward. And it was no problem. There was more resistance, obviously, because the trade-off that you have when you're using serrated edge that has greater cutting potential is that there is going to be more resistance when you deliver that strike. It's attempting to move through a lot more material more quickly, so you're going to feel more resistance. But there's no problem cutting through that ham. All right, the last edge weapon that we're going to test out, and this is just for my curiosity, is the Thorn, which is another one of my knives, which I already described to you. So expect this to have a good amount of pop. It will cut, but it's not going to sail through, I guarantee you. And we'll do a backhand cut. So I'll come like this, the backhand cut. All right, we're gonna hit it right here. Try to cut through that sticker. Well, that cut pretty darn well. I think that might have, I mean, it is the longest of blades. I think that might have been the most devastating cut out of all of them, which goes to show you so this is that cut from that Thorn, and it's like extremely devastating cut, which goes to show you one fact about knives. If you're going to be using them for defensive purposes, what cuts well through paper or cardboard is not necessarily something that's going to cut through this ham very well. I didn't expect it to cut that well. I'm assuming because of the wider behind the edge thickness, as it's cutting through this ham, it is spreading it open, so it is allowing it to get deeper into that ham without the friction stopping the blade or deflecting it. That's why I'm doing this. We're all learning something. Kind of changes my opinion about a few things. The two blades that were easiest to cut into this ham were both thicker behind the edge, which also gives it more edge stability and more strength. Something to consider. All right, so that's gonna be all the different blades that we're gonna be testing today. Overall winner for today would be this Thorn, because it has such a robust tip that's sharpened both ends, has a reach advantage for penetrating, and then it also did extremely well slashing through that ham. So to me, that'd be the one I would choose. And if you look at traditional fighting knife designs, like from World War II, a lot of them look very similar to this. So probably knew what they were talking about. Got some more, just a little bit more unmolested meat here, and I'm going to run through some of these again just to see if we get any results, if it's repeatable. So let's run it back from the top. We'll just do rapid fire. Back to the top. Very nice. Wasn't too happy with the results because of where I was hitting the meat and the interaction between the blade. It's kind of a flat part, and I was, this is not a very long blade. So let's try it on this more rounded part. Should give us a better result with this right now. Much better. Back to the gator. Oh yeah. Telling you. They say the edge geometry is everything. Typically, they're talking about making blades that are really slicey. For EDC tasks, cutting cardboard, cutting paper, whatever. The best results that I've gotten today are with these knives with very robust geometry. Still, obviously, very sharp edges. I hand sharpen all of my knives, but the geometry is thick behind the edge. You see the bevel there is not very tall. This is 10-degree bevel, but it's not very tall. It's not a lot of material removal. This is 1/8 inch stock. So it basically goes from the edge to 1/8 inch thick in that amount of distance. So you have a lot of material behind the edge. As long as you have a sharp edge, it causes the material to spread. Whatever you're cutting through, like this hand, as you're cutting through it, it is spreading it open, so it goes deep. As you can see, it went through. Remember I was saying that with the Wharncliffe, it's going to go, whatever you hit it with, it's going directly through that part. Went straight through, through the shrink wrap, and then through the edge of my very janky Wavemaster. Put this back up there because I want to show you, we might as well, we're here, how that penetrates. Our ham is now naked and covered in grass. All right, let's try out this chisel ground sharpened swedge for penetrating. Pearson pole. Woo! That's the new most devastating blow of the day by far. And look at that, my finger getting broken. Didn't get pulled off. It penetrated full depth and sliced right through on the way out. So this is like, I'm not pushing this in any further. It went full depth. It's a 3-inch blade, and then it went at least 3 inches deep. And then sliced all the way back out. Remember I was telling you about those chisel grinds, very sharp. So it went in and sliced out, which is why from close range, from touching distance, that Pacol style of those draw cuts, pierce draw, back cuts, can be so devastating because you're adding penetration and then cutting your way out or cutting your way back. It's extremely effective. And of course, my knives are extremely effective. There's a lot of thought that goes into my designs. As you can see, I have good bit of experience with knives, and I know what should work. I don't necessarily need to come out here and test this on meat, because some of these results are very predictable. I know exactly what I was doing when I designed this, having this Wharncliffe style combined with the chisel ground tip, multiple gripping positions, so that you're not going to lose your knife in that Pakal grip. But you also have retention, reinforcement. This reinforces the ring, so the criticism of ringed knives is that it puts a lot of pressure on one finger. Well, this solves that problem. Now you're distributing any force between two fingers, plus the handle, and whatever grip. And it's versatile. You have this pressure grip for getting in close, pushing, or real close in, pulling. If you're a bit further away, you have this choke back grip. You're not hanging off the end of the knife. You don't have to worry about losing it. You can also palm this for penetrating. And of course, you can hold it just like this as well. Gives you a little bit more range for those pokey, but you still have that capability of the Pakal style. All right, enough bragging on my knives. Oh, you could choke back even further, by the way, because you have 2 points of retention. You could choke back further if you wanted more reach. You really don't need that pinky. This works too. That works. Really want some reach. Back to our other chisel ground blade, the Dash Kiridashi, which incidentally also works very well in Pakal because I designed it with a neutral handle. It is paracord wrapped. This is whatever way that you can grab this knife, and it's obviously much flatter than it is. It's wider and flatter. So any way that you can put your hand on this is comfortable. You can use it in any orientation. Sometimes neutral is the most versatile. Well, I caught a little more than just the corner. I don't know. I just sailed right there, and no damage whatsoever because I cut right through a bone. You see this right here? This is a bone. It sailed right through it. Not through the middle, but it just sailed right through that bone. There's a piece of it right there. Didn't even slow down. Went all the way through, and then once again I cut my janky Wavemaster. And as you can see, 0 damage. This knife is made out of 15 in 20. I had to think for a second. Couldn't remember if I made it out of ACR or 15 in 20. This one's made from 15 in 20, which is a steel that you may have, even if you're a knife person. Even if you're a knife person, you may have never heard of 15 in 20. And if you have, you probably heard of it in the context of Damascus. It's normally used as an ingredient in Damascus. So like this knife is made from ADCR. You can see how dark it is. I didn't do anything to darken this knife. I just didn't grind off the forging. So this is carbon buildup on the outside from the forging process and the forging and heat quenching process, just like this is. on the back here and on the top. But as you can see, there's a difference in color, and you can see how smooth the texture is. 15 and 20 ADCR. Normally you could take these two, you would forge these together into a billet, fold it, cut it, and then you'd have two steels that have been combined into one. The difference in the color of the two and the luster would create a Damascus pattern, and that's those knives that you see with the patterns in them. Some of them are fake, some of them are laser etched or acid etched, some of them are real. 15 and 20 is normally the high luster, high shine steel that they put in non-stainless Damascus. All that means is that it can get very, very shiny. So if you polish it, it can get extremely shiny. Just like this. You see the, and I have not like high polished these. These are just, this is just finished to high grit, because I left a lot of the forging on there. This one's also made out of 15 and 20. And you can see the reflective quality, like mirror-like quality, versus this was finished the same grit, but it's ADCR. It just doesn't have that shine to it like this does. Put them beside each other, you see the difference in shine. Also, you'll see the, which I'll leave this on here on purpose, the forging. I think it looks very interesting. It looks cool to me. It's my style. They're my knives. I make them the way I want to. But if you combine these two, you have contrast, and that it creates a pattern. It's mostly for looks. But what a lot of people don't know is that 15 and 20 in of itself is a high carbon steel. Unlike ADCR, it has no chromium in it. It has nickel. So it is mostly carbon and nickel. It's a carbon and nickel based steel. Nickel, just like in our currency, nickels. That's what gives it its shine. These nickels are meant to be shiny. They picked that for a reason. However, the balance of the steel, the 15 and 20, is very good, especially for self-defense knives. It provides a lot of toughness. This is a very tough steel. It has good edge retention, as good as most carbon steels. It's not going to be like some of the super stainless steels that have extremely high carbon content and chromium and vanadium and other elements. But it has a lot more toughness than most stainless steels, as does ADCR. So the performance of ADCR in 15 and 20 is very comparable. Just gonna have different colors, basically. Shinier and more weathered looking from the ADCR. You can get a black finish on ADCR pretty easily. Just because the shiny does not mean that it will not oxidize. But what I've noticed through my experience working with the steel, using the steel, is that when 15 and 20 oxidizes, it does not rust. It tarnishes, like silver, or like nickels, like the currency. So although it is not stainless in the sense that it will oxidize, I haven't seen it rust. That's why a lot of my knives I've been making recently, it's still like ADCR. It's an old classic, very tough, decent edge retention, great for self-defense application, easy to sharpen. But I've really been favoring this 15 and 20 because although it will oxidize in the sense that it will tarnish, I have not seen it rust. And it does get a very high luster. And what I've noticed is that we'll take an extremely razor-like edge. Extremely razor-like edge. This is 15 and 20. And this is 15 and 20. And this is probably the sliciest knife out here by far. Both are great steels. For St. Patrick's Day, I'm doing a drop with a Skene Dhu, which is a traditional Scottish boot knife. They put it in their sock under their kilt, and that's going to be made out of 15 in 20. So that'll be a special St. Patrick's Day drop. It'll have several like traditional Scottish and Gaelic designs. I'm going to do a Brokeback Sax, maybe a dirk. We'll see. So be on a lookout for that. All right, let's see if we can replicate the results with Thorn. This will also be released in the St. Patrick's Day drop. So if you remember, this one was surprising how well it cut because the edge geometry is very thick. Pretty robust. No edge deformity is going to happen on that one. And this is, remember, bayonet ground. So this top portion here is sharpened for extra penetration, but you can still put your thumb up on there if you need to get more pressure. It's got this little guard, which is where it gets its name, the thorn. And this is my design it's my handle design. It's a combination of tombstone grip and some other ergonomics that make it extremely comfortable in hand and easy to point. Let's do this. We'll do one slash, see if we can replicate the results of splitting that thing open, and then we'll use that bayonet tip for the call. Good spot. Rather not smack that bone if I don't have to. All right, we're just gonna hit it right here. Get a good old hack. Imagine this is trapezius. Yep, it's still doing. I mean, it is just sailing right there. I had to pull back there at the last second because once again, I hit my dang here, but it's just sailing through. That edge geometry just pushes it right through, like nothing. All right, let's try that. The bayonet side, which is the short side. We'll do the Pakal thing. We're gonna get it. And we all bone free, so we're gonna get it right here. Another hole in it. There's that one. Run out of spaces to hit here. That did nothing. I hit that. That's not going very hard, obviously. Hit that bone. Did nothing. Let's do this way. There we go. Yep. So this just, that much of the tip. Goes right in. Slashes right through. It's also catching on, all this junk. All right. Let's give our cold steel Coban another shot at it. All right, this is gonna be our last one because we are running out of places to hit this thing. It's cold steel Coban right across here. Does its job. All right, I hope you all enjoyed the video. This is all just for fun. Remember, don't try this at home. You might hurt yourself, and that's not my fault. Also, don't stab anybody. Knives are considered deadly force, and you don't want to do that. Don't stab anybody. This is all just for fun. We're just kidding around. This is a hobby. That's it. Don't forget to follow me, like the video, whatever platform you see it, and check out my website, tacticalpracticaldefense.com. Any of the knives that are not on the website currently are going to be on there with the St. Patrick's Day drop, which should be coming up for the next week. Thank you. tacticalpracticaldefense.com. Thank you.